This movie takes place in the Wild West, where two extraordinary guys' paths cross. First, there's Virgil Cole, a seasoned gunslinger who works for money. Then there's Everett Hitch, a West Point graduate who chose the wild frontier over the strict army life. They first met around a dozen years ago, when Everett bravely supported Virgil in a big gunfight. Since then, their lives were connected, and Everett willingly became Virgil's loyal sidekick. But these guys weren't just your regular gunfighters. They only used their weapons when they were on the right side of the law. They became protectors of towns that were drowning in chaos, hired to bring back order to lawless places. Their journey for justice takes them to an interesting character named Randall Bragg, who's a big deal in the wildlands outside the quiet town of Appaloosa. Bragg and his wild gang were like a dark cloud of fear hanging over the land. They did things their own strange way, making their own rules. One day, the town's sheriff and his two helpers decided to stand up to Bragg's lawlessness. They tried to arrest two of Bragg's guys for a terrible crime, but they didn't know what a tragic mistake they were making. Bragg, driven by his cruel determination, decided to take things into his own hands, leaving behind a trail of violence and death. A young ranch worker saw all of this, a silent witness to the madness in the harsh Wild West. The town's leaders came together to talk with Virgil and Everett. They didn't really want to, but they had no choice. Virgil had some tough conditions. Either they follow his way without arguing, or they hit the road. With no better options, the town's leaders reluctantly agreed to Virgil's strict demands. Not long after, there was a big ruckus in a local bar. It happened because two of Bragg's guys were acting really shamefully by peeing on the floor. Virgil and Everett, always watchful, went up to them and warned them to stop being unruly or they'd end up in jail. But these troublemakers didn't care about warnings or going to jail. Instead, they pulled out their guns on Virgil, leading to a deadly showdown. At the same time, Everett dealt with another aggressive guy who came out of a hidden door. A day later, Bragg and his tough gang came into town, gathering in a dimly lit bar to face off with Virgil and Everett. Bragg tried to make peace, but Virgil wouldn't budge. He couldn't forget his friend, the previous sheriff, and that made him really stubborn. Things got really tense, and Virgil declared that from now on, no one could have weapons in town. Next, we see a new person, Allison French, getting off a train. She's got just $1 to her name. Everett notices her pretty quickly, and he's curious about her, like a little spark of interest in his mind. He quietly follows her to a small restaurant, and guess what? Virgil's already there, having his breakfast. In this simple place to eat, there's a quiet competition between the two guys, both wanting to get close to the mysterious Allison. But it's Virgil who takes the first step, all wrapped up in curiosity. He proudly tells her he's the town's marshal, and Allison smiles and starts flirting a bit. Virgil, wanting to impress her, invites her to show off her musical talent at the local hotel, even offering her a chance to stay for free. But Allison, with a heart that doesn't want to get involved in anything shady, politely says no to any other job. Later, inside their law office, Everett and Virgil have a straightforward talk about Allison. Everett, being a bit playful, but also encouraging, pushes Virgil a little when it comes to his growing feelings for her. But their conversation is suddenly interrupted when they spot some riders up on a nearby hill, carefully watching the town of Appaloosa below. Determined to find out what's going on, the two friends decide to check it out. When they get to the top of the hill, there's a tense moment. Virgil, using the end of his gun, makes it clear that he doesn't believe Bragg has any power, neither in the town nor in the wild areas around it. In the dimly lit bar, Virgil gets really angry all of a sudden. He jumps up and goes after a noisy guy who said rude things in front of Allison. Virgil's fists start flying, and Everett has to step in to calm him down. You can tell that Virgil has a strong sense of what's right and wrong, and he doesn't get mixed up in the gray areas. Even though he usually stays cool when things get complicated, he becomes a force to be reckoned with when someone provokes him. Later, Everett says sorry to the guy who got beaten up and offers him a drink to make him feel better. When someone asks why Virgil doesn't apologize himself, Everett explains something about his friend. Virgil's a man of action, not words. If the town wants his protection, they have to accept both his good and bad sides, because they've got the real man, not some made-up legend. Time goes by, with days and weeks quietly passing. One morning, while they're having breakfast, Allison comes downstairs with Virgil. It's clear to anyone who sees them that they're close. Without saying a word, it's obvious they spent the night together. Allison happily tells everyone that Virgil plans to build a house for them in town, where they'll live as a couple. Everett, surprised and a little sad, congratulates them sincerely but keeps quiet. But the peaceful morning is suddenly interrupted by Joe Whitfield, who brings some serious news. He saw the terrible things Bragg and his gang did, and he's ready to testify. Virgil and Everett make sure Joe is really determined because it's going to be a tough job. Once they're sure he's ready, they start a mission to bring Bragg to justice, and things start moving towards a showdown. They find Bragg near an outdoor bathroom and make him go back to town, with his gang reluctantly following along. Now they have to guard Bragg all the time, and to make it worse, they put him in a cell right next to Joe, and he keeps making scary threats to the young man. In the meantime, Virgil was working hard on building Allison's house, showing how much he cared. But there were some things she wanted that he didn't know how to do. So, he sent Everett to help her out. When Everett got to Allison's place, something surprising happened. She cornered him and kissed him without warning. For a short moment, they both gave in to the attraction, but then Everett gently pushed her away, reminding her that they were both committed to Virgil. Allison felt hurt and upset, so she asked him to leave. Everett decided not to tell Virgil about this, but he talked to a Hispanic prostitute he knew. She warned him that Allison might eventually tell Virgil, but she might not tell the story in a good way. In their office, two more lawmen show up, and they've got a judge with them. They offer to help keep an eye on Bragg. Virgil is thankful for the help and says he's glad they're here. Meanwhile, the tough Shelton brothers arrive in town. They're known as skilled hired guns, and they're up for any kind of job, legal or not. After a short talk, Virgil makes it clear who's in charge around here. With things settled, the Shelton brothers head to the local hotel, just as Virgil and Allison leave for a peaceful picnic in a horse-drawn carriage. The trial begins, and all of Bragg's sons said good things about him, but the evidence Joe provides is stronger. Even though Bragg gives a fancy speech, he can't avoid what's coming. After Joe testifies, the judge is worried about his safety, so he tells him to get on his horse and leave town. The judge orders that Bragg will be executed in another city. When the harsh sentence is given, Bragg gives the Shelton brothers a chilling look. During the train journey, everything is calm until an unexpected stop for water. Suddenly, the Shelton brothers appear under the train, with Allison tied to a horse. They give a clear message. They'll let Allison go if Bragg is set free. Virgil struggles with this tough decision, but he agrees to their demand, with a condition that they'll release Allison when they want to. It makes Virgil really frustrated because he loses his prisoner. He starts walking to follow the Shelton brothers, Bragg, and Allison. At the same time, Everett goes back on the train to get some horses. After a whole day of chasing, Virgil is finally on a horse, and he catches up to the group. The tension grows as their paths cross again. As the tension hung in the air, a group of Native Americans appeared on the horizon. Virgil and Everett looked at each other with worry. But then they saw something unexpected. Allison and Bragg were in a river, playing without a care, and Allison was barely dressed. Their surprise didn't last long because the approaching Native Americans were coming closer, and it was clear they were planning to attack. Virgil and Everett had to fight off the Native Americans to protect the group. In the middle of the chaos, they managed to bring down one of the Indian horses. In the heat of the battle, Virgil made a deal with the Shelton brothers, putting aside their personal issues for now. Staying alive was more important, so they worked together to get out of danger. They agreed to settle their differences later. While they were on guard duty, Allison came up to Virgil and Everett. She sounded scared as she admitted she had made a mistake. She talked about her vulnerability, and there was a shadow of regret hanging over her. Virgil had a frank talk with Everett and asked him if he thought Allison might do something like that again. Everett's answer was straightforward but deep. He said, "Allison needs a man." He meant she was looking for a real connection with someone. But then things got weird when Allison tried to accuse Everett of doing something wrong, saying he touched her inappropriately. Virgil wanted to know the truth, so he asked Everett, who strongly denied it. Virgil decided to believe Everett and took his side over Allison's. While they waited, expecting another attack, Everett made a thoughtful observation. He realized that Allison wasn't promiscuous. She just wanted to feel special to someone, even though it seemed like the person she liked changed over time, like the leader of a herd. Virgil told Everett that he had deep feelings for Allison and cared about her, flaws and all. Allison, looking nervous, joined the conversation. When the men reassured her, saying that fear was a part of their job, she opened up and admitted that she was always afraid of losing everything and ending up with nothing. In response, Virgil promised to protect her and watch over her for as long as she needed him, making their bond stronger even though there was a lot of uncertainty around them. As Virgil and Everett headed to the stockyards to deal with the Shelton brothers, they found out something shocking. The town marshal they had trusted to keep Bragg safe turned out to be related to the Sheltons. It was a terrible twist of fate, and now the marshal, Bragg, and the Shelton brothers were all on the same side against the two lawmen. Virgil acted quickly and shot one of the brothers and the dishonest marshal. At the same time, Everett took care of the other brother. This left Bragg as the only one left, but Bragg managed to get away, riding off on a horse. Virgil and Everett were hurt, but luckily, they weren't fatally wounded. Allison rushed to Virgil, worried that he might be close to dying. After some time, they finished building the house. Virgil's left knee was permanently damaged, and he needed a brace for support. Despite all the crazy things that happened, like Allison's mistakes, they found moments to laugh and be happy. But then, the town's leaders gave them some really disappointing news. Bragg had been pardoned by the President of the United States. It was a big surprise because even though Bragg had talked about having connections to the president, most people thought it was just a made-up story. Some time passed, and Bragg showed up in town looking completely different. He was dressed like a fancy gentleman, wearing a nice suit, which was a big change from how he used to look. He said he was turning over a new leaf and even bought and fixed up the local hotel. But nobody knew where he got the money for all of this, which made people wonder if his change was for real. Bragg tried to make things right with Virgil, but Virgil turned him down. It seemed like Bragg had a lot of influence over the town's leaders, which made it seem like Virgil's days as the marshal were numbered. Virgil and Everett had a serious talk, and Everett realized that there weren't many opportunities for someone like him in Appaloosa anymore. But Virgil was determined to stay because of Allison and told Everett he could leave if he needed to. Everett was troubled when he found out that Allison had gone to Bragg's room at the hotel. It seemed like the balance of power was shifting, and even though Allison didn't seem happy about it, she was going along with the changes in town, which was unsettling for everyone. The next day, Everett faced a big decision. He gave a special necklace to the Hispanic girl and told her something important. He shared his regret about something he did in the past, the only time he took a life when he wasn't on duty as a lawman. He was really disappointed in himself, and he told her he was leaving. He took his horses and headed to the hotel. In the dimly lit bar at the hotel, Everett did something important. He put his badge and gun on the counter, which was like a symbol of him giving up his lawman role. He was determined as he confronted Bragg, punching him and challenging him to a duel. He made Bragg even angrier by slapping him and saying some hurtful things about his pride. Then, Everett went outside and waited for Bragg to come out, and the tension was really high. In the middle of this face-off, Everett's woman rushed to find Virgil and told him what was happening. Virgil was confused by the sudden change, so he asked Everett for an explanation. But Everett asked Virgil to step aside and said this was a moment where he needed something from Virgil, even though he had never asked for anything before. The big showdown happened really fast, and Bragg ended up dead on the ground. Everett didn't get hurt, and he got on his horse and left Appaloosa. The story ends with Everett thinking about what happened. He knows that because of what he did, Allison and Virgil have a chance to fix things between them. As he rides away from town, he's starting a journey to find out more about himself, leaving behind a town with a lot of history and problems. So the moral of the story is in the Wild West. When facing danger, always remember to check under the train for unexpected surprises. And if you're going to challenge a bad guy to a duel, make sure you've got a good reason, a snazzy outfit, and your trusty badge ready to go.